the world of white supremacy and the mechanisms of white supremacy, it's full of illusion. That is kind of what it is. And so
Yeah.
like it's very difficult to break people out of it, and you can only do it if people are willing, and people gain that willingness through relationships. That's primarily how. And so how do relationships get built? Through conversation. It starts with a conversation. It starts with just communication. And people are always trying to limit, Walter, like the importance of the work that I'm doing here, but like the truth of the matter is you have to start here. There really is no other place to start, except for building trust, and you can only build trust through communication. So that's why I would sit across from, I'm sure you're familiar with what's his name, the jazz musician, or the gosh, what's his name? Why can't I think of it? The one time I need him. You know why I can't think of it? It's because he drives me absolutely crazy. Let me look him up real quick. Guy who collected KKK robes. Daryl Davis.
Okay.
Have you heard of Daryl Davis?
I don't I don't think so.
Yeah, Daryl Davis. He was playing. He was playing piano or something, and he was playing some gig in the South, and these KKK members were watching him, and they were bringing their buddies because he was playing exactly the same way that a white musician who they admired and who they already respected was playing. And they're like, look at this black guy, play the same way, And then they started talking to him and he started talking to them. And he ended up finding some common ground with them and kind of inviting them over, having meals with them, different stuff like that. Thanks for putting the link to the Wikipedia in the chat. But yeah, ultimately they started giving away their robes to him because they could no longer hate him because they had developed a relationship with him and they
Yeah.
realized it shattered their ideology. And he's
I
collected dozens of robes.
I wonder because it's one of the things is like this idea of sitting across from. I think what I don't trust in that situation is my own ability to keep my cool and not start and just insult, and that would be unproductive. But I wonder if that's just because I've been so I've had that. What was the word you said before? You've been steeped in it. So it's part of the mechanism of it, where it's like, and it's one of the things that's kind of interesting because I've kind of struggled to figure out what my place is in this whole enterprise. Because sometimes I'll get people that'll write me, and you get all kinds of hostile comments. I wrote my article today about the comments I get. Somebody wanted to make me into a rug. So, so you get all these hostile comments, and some of them are just completely unreal. But then every now and then, some people say things that's like, well, maybe that's got something to it. And somebody say things like, well, who are you? It's like, who elected you to speak for the black community? And it's like, well, I don't, that's never been my objective. What I want to do is bring my piece of the puzzle of the things I've seen, like as a white person raised in a rural area. And it's like, this is what I've been taught to think. This is how I've figured out that those things are wrong. What else have I not seen? Like just kind of like to orient. So we have some sort of an expectation. We have a model for what's out there. And there's a lot of different rural areas and a lot of different regions where a lot of different things are in play. So, but maybe it's like my role will never be to sit across the table from a white supremacist because I've already been I can't. I'm too. I think maybe I'll get to that. And I was kind of fine. Like when
I
Loretta
mean, I
Ross
mean,
said she
brother,
could.
a white supremacist has set your table before,
Yeah.
like so, so like,
Yeah, too triggered by that. There's only so much you can ask. You can train your. I got a dog. You can train a dog really well, but you can't expect to put a piece of steak in front of him and have him leave it forever. So there's that kind of thing. But when Loretta Ross said that, I was just amazed by it, and just like that spiritual calm. And I think you have it too, and it's like I always feel like it's like with a lot of white people, there's kind of this anxiety. There's like this percolating anxiety that's kind of under the surface. Like, and I think it kind of comes across as awkwardness sometimes, but then it's like, and it gets in a, it can look kind of silly, but then it can quickly turn to something kind of ugly. And it's like, I don't, it's always interesting when I get that sense from people. They've got this kind of just kind of a greater spiritual peace that I guess I would aspire to.
well, um, I want to say one thing. I want to tell a story about the kind of anxiety that I feel like I've observed in one particular situation. So when I first started the show, um, I started asking my friends, people I went to school with, people who have been my friends for a long time, colleagues, to be on the show, family members. And I remember one particular conversation I had with a racialized white kid who went to law school with me. And there were several interesting moments during my conversation and invitation conversation with him. But one particular was very interesting. And it was us talking about the fact that he had his first real kind of critical thought conversation about race when he was 20 years old. And he remembered this conversation. He was on a road trip with some of his friends. And he, as we were talking, he was being reminded of that conversation. He's like, I think that's the first one that I ever had. And this incredible, like, kind of sadness was coming over him as he was having that realization because he knew enough at this point to know that that meant something more than the fact that it took him until 20 years old to have that conversation meant something bigger about the country, meant something different, about his life experience, maybe about his family, right? And you start having this waterfall of cascading realizations about the racialized environment in which you grew up and in which you lived. And he just started crying.
Yeah.
And he couldn't handle it. And he ended the conversation shortly after that, and he never came on the show. I've never talked to him since. He's probably a judge by now. um, and it's just you can't get peace until you choose to accept the way that what you went through. Like, and it's not like I didn't go through the same kind of anxiety. It may have a different source, but it's still the same. Like, for instance, I was always told I wasn't black enough, Walter, right? I was always told I wasn't black. I'm an Oreo, white on the inside, black on the outside. And I even wrote in my poem, 6 years old, and I'd already been told the difference between white and black, right? When that 6-year-old kid came up to me in my elementary school and said, "Why don't you act black? You don't curse, you get good grades, you're not in a gang." Boom, 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 boom. Just a dagger to
Yeah.
my heart every time. And, I had to kind of deal with that and deal with my different perspective from a very young age about race. I never took on a racial identity. I never took on blackness as like who I am in any way, shape, or form. I knew it wasn't who I was. And most people who were racialized as whatever never thought the same way. So I had to go through my life that way. Can you imagine the kind of anxiety that had me walk through life with? It's a different flavor, but it still was this thing percolating under the surface that caused me to react in different
Yeah.
ways over the course of my life, right? And so I had to come to terms with that. And actually, in 2024, while everyone's complaining about how much we talk about race, I'm actually like relieved. It's like
Yeah.
a great relief to me to be able to just be myself and talk about all of these things that for decades I've explored clandestinely and without people's conscious knowledge. And now I can talk about all the stories.
Yeah. It was when I went to Peru, and one of the things about that was really remarkable. And it was, I had a couple of just wonderful experiences where I'm, trying to learn through immersion Spanish, which is just a wonderful way to just completely get out of, it's just a nice way to reinvent yourself. You go to some place like that where nobody knows who you are, you're learning, and just like the memories that drew up. Cause I started having really strong memories about the last time I couldn't make myself understood, cause I like to speak. I'm a writer, and it's like, but the last time I felt that frustrated was, and I was really young. And then all these other memories from when I was really young started coming back, really vivid memories from that time. And it was just kind of neat to kind of relive that. But it was also just neat in Peru to just have the example that other people believe things that are radically different than the things you grew up with. They're getting along just fine. Because so much of the United States is threat, fear. If you don't do things the way they've always been done, there will be dire consequences. This is the only way. This is the best way. If you even are critical of it, there will be consequences. You go and live, you're just like, okay, I'm out. go to another country, spend 10 years living a way that's completely different, no consequences. But I think it's hard to, it's just, it's so hard to have that critical analysis of the United States culture unless you've taken some time away from it and experienced another culture and can see the things that are just completely invalid. That you just there's so many things that we assume to be true that are just not, and just uncovering all those things that are not true is a process that takes decades.
Thanks for watching. For access to the full-length conversation and all of the 2-hour-long unedited conversations that I've had on race, click the support link in the description below. Thanks for your support and see you next time.